Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe.
Welcome back, darlings. I'm TV host, entertainment journalist, Cognac Wellerlane, and I am here with a very, very special gentleman. It's a documentary. It's all about him, and the name of the documentary is called My Nephew, Jamie. And it was directed and produced by Bonnie Bean. She's also a fabulous filmmaker and publicist. And I'm here with this gentleman, and I'm so thrilled to be sitting next to him. This whole documentary is about he himself, but more importantly, he is the nephew of Andy Warhol. Welcome to Cognac's Corner, and thank you so much for this wonderful interview.
Thank you so much. I'm very honored to be here. And tonight we just saw a short, rough cut of the film.
Yes, it was tell my audience, how long was the trailer?
Well, I think it was 20 minutes. And Bonnie's been working on it for the last several years. And
So it's 20 minutes.
yes, but I mean, the final film will be about an hour and 15 minutes. So we saw just a snippet of what's to come.
It's amazing as it is. It truly is amazing. But I have to ask you, Jamie. Everyone calls you Jamie, but your name is James. Am I right?
That's right. But Jamie it was a family name. All my brothers and sisters. I have 6 brothers and sisters.
They called you Jamie.
Yes.
Yes. But this is what's fascinating me. Your name is Warhola.
Yes.
Now, is that really Andy Warhol's name, Warhola?
That was his original name.
I knew it!
His original name was Andrew Warhola.
And he thought that was more sophisticated to be called Warhol.
Yeah, it's part of that sophistication, but it's also like easier to say. Andy Warhol, 2 syllables. And he when he came to New York, he dropped the A. So a lot of people ask me, why is your name different? Well, his original name was Warhola.
I knew it. I knew that was his original name. I just had that feeling. Now, you wanted to be an artist your whole life, from the time you were a little tiny kid, right?
Like I remember when I was 4 or 5, and I was begging my parents to buy me like finger paints.
Was it because of Andy, or do you think it was just your DNA?
Oh, gee, that's a good question. It might be both, because
I think it is both. I think that you were inspired by your uncle, but your uncle and you have that DNA. You must have had great artists in the past, or maybe you were reincarnated from the past, and that's why you are an artist today.
well, Andy's mother, Julia, was a wonderful artist in her own way. She was a very spiritual person. So I think the art gene came down through my grandmother. And I can believe in that, that it gets passed on in some strange way. But it did help that I saw my uncle doing what he did.
And you were totally fascinated by your uncle?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He was like everything to you? Was he like,
He was so different than my father, who my father was his oldest brother, and he was several years older, but totally different. And it was hard to believe that he came from the same family, Andy, because he was a very delicate. He was an artist. I mean,
he always used to say, "You're the boss, applesauce." Is that true? Did he really say that?
I'm not sure. I don't remember him saying that to me, but it's kind of funny now that you mention it.
I heard him say that in a film. "You're the boss, applesauce."
Really? Oh my God!
I heard there was some movie about him and one of the girls that was like his muse that was in his films. But that came later on, him wanting to be a filmmaker. Am I right about that?
Yeah, but he did his early pop art in the 60s, like 61 and 62. And then in 63, 64, he wanted to become a filmmaker. So it was like right then when he was doing his early pop art.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think he wanted to be a filmmaker?
I think he saw that filmmaking was the art form of the future. And in a way,
He's right. He's right.
I mean, look, everything now is film.
Well, look what we're doing. Look what we're doing, right? It's all about film. And this thing about Marilyn Monroe, that he had this fascination with Marilyn Monroe. Why did he have that fascination?
Well, when he was first starting doing the pop art, he was doing paintings of famous people. And just so happened, it was August of 62, she passed away.
Yes, I remember that.
So
I was alive when she died.
oh, I know. I wouldn't. I was alive, but I was too young to know who she was. But my uncle decided right at that moment that he would do these paintings, and they became his signature work. His most important works were his Marilyn Monroe paintings, and they were beautiful.
Oh, she was stunning. She was born 1926. And she died 1962. There's something weird about those numbers. I believe in that stuff, you know.
I believe it too. I mean, my uncle was totally enthralled with her fame and her beauty and her talent. I think he was.
I think he wanted to be like that.
I
think he wanted to emulate that.
Yeah, I'm sure that it had something to do with it. That he.
Was he a big movie buff? And when he was
yeah.
a kid, he used to go to the movies all the time.
From what my father told me, my father would take him to the theater all the time.
That's like my father.
Mm-hmm.
My father would take me to the movies when I was like 3 years old, and I was totally fascinated. I wanted to be a movie star, but come from a very old-fashioned Italian family, and my father would say, my parents would say, only Bhutanese do that. No, get married, be a secretary, and have babies. But I always wanted to be in front of the camera. I never wanted to just be a housewife. I never just wanted to do that. Mm-hmm. So I get that. And my father used to go to the movies for a nickel. Can you believe that?
Oh yeah, it's and that's when Andy was going when he was younger. It was very affordable. But my father knew the guy who owned the theater, so he got to go in free. And in a way, my dad would just leave him there, and he would enjoy a double feature.
That's what my father used to do. He used to do the same thing. But more importantly, I wanted to ask you, everything that he did, he wanted you to become a filmmaker, but you never wanted to do that, huh? Why not?
You know what? I was being too realistic and too, well, I didn't think big like my uncle. My uncle wanted me to become a filmmaker. He says, oh, you should go out to Hollywood and make films like that guy who made Star Wars. And I said, gee, Uncle Andy, how do you do that? I mean, but he thought big in a way. And I was interested in becoming an illustrator like what my uncle had done. And I wanted to be like him, but I didn't really want to do film. Although, he was ahead of his time. He knew.
But he was the person that was an innovator, and
Yes.
and he
saw that as the place for innovation.
Yes. But you not everybody could be a big movie star. Not everybody could be a big filmmaker. But there's beauty in just being simplistically an illustrator, just as you are. And I think that Bonnie is right. I think you are a better artist than Andy. I looked at your artwork, and I think you are. But he was an innovator, so there's a difference.
There is. And my uncle, he was a creative genius.
Yes, and he knew how to make money. Not everybody knows how to do that,
And,
Jamie.
I got to say that he got that from my father, because my father was what you call like a hustler. My dad could buy a giant bag of peanuts, sell them at a baseball game, and make double his money. And he taught Andy that type of commerce. You can make money with money. And
Was he good at math, your father?
my dad was very good with math.
So was my father. My father didn't know anything about history, didn't know anything about English, wasn't good in the classroom, but he was good with math.
Now, I don't know if Andy was good at math, but I know that Andy was good at connecting. He was a great promoter. He basically he was a type of person that liked to network. I mean, we call it networking today, but he made all the connections with art directors. He got the jobs. He became a very successful illustrator. He made a lot of money. He made enough money before he became a pop artist to buy his own building, his own brownstone in New York in 1960, and he did that only through his illustration work. But it was back in the days when you got paid really well for doing a cover of like Harper's Bazaar or Glamour magazine. He would do illustrations, and you got paid very well.
Interesting, fascinating. Who was his favorite star? Was it Marilyn Monroe, or did he have somebody that he really idolized in Hollywood? Maybe somebody that he would want to put in his movies that he thought was like the most outrageous actor or actress.
Well, he did paintings of all like he did Marlon Brando, he did Elizabeth Taylor.
He knew these people too.
Well, he knew Elizabeth Taylor. I don't think he knew Marlon Brando, and I don't think he met. I kind of think he didn't meet Marilyn Monroe. I'm guessing, although she used to go to Serendipity, and he used to hang out at Serendipity, and that's like an ice cream place.
Something tells me he used to follow. He was a stalker.
maybe, but
Something tells me he was a stalker.
well, hey, he did. There is stories about him going after Truman Capote.
They didn't like each other. Well, did they like each
Not
other?
in the beginning. I think Truman was very upset that he was being stalked by Andy. But then, here Andy becomes famous like Truman, and then they kind of meet on their equal terms.
It's like Joan Crawford and Betty Davis.
Yes.
It's like that kind of idea. So now, tell my audience, what is the one thing that you know about your uncle, Andy Warhol, that the world doesn't know about? Is there one thing that we should know about him that no one knows about, but you know about it?
Interesting thing. His first language wasn't English. It was a language called Carpatho-Rusyn, and he spoke it with his mother till he was 5 or 6 years old, and then he learned English. But he spoke fluent in this other language, and it's an Eastern European language, and most people never realize Andy could speak another language. So I thought I'd share that with you.
That's amazing. Am I like the only person that knows this?
Maybe. I mean,
Well, now the whole world is going to know it, right? The whole world is going to know this. And you must be thrilled that somebody is making a documentary about you. You have gotten your fame. Now is the time. It's going to happen now. You are going to be, I know you're very modest, but this is your time.
Thank you so much. I'm very flattered, and I'm honored to be, highlighted.
Gushed over.
I know. This is really first for me.
Now you know what Andy felt like.
Yeah, but he was a little shy, He I don't know if he liked attention.
Oh, come on, he pretended. He must have loved it.
Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right.
I believe he didn't
He
like
liked
it.
reading about himself in the magazines and newspapers. But when he was interviewed, I think he was always tongue-tied. Like, oh,
Well, actors are, actors are funny people to interview because they learn. Well, he wasn't an actor, but actors, they memorize lines. So sometimes when they're being interviewed, they're nervous because like I've had actors say to me, "Well, what is she going to ask me?" They said, "Don't worry, Cognac never asks any scandalous questions. You'll be fine. Don't worry, don't worry." So that's the whole story. But now, I want to ask you. What is next for Jamie? What's next for you?
well, I'm being an artist. I'm not doing the illustration that I used to. I'm doing kids' books and things. I'm doing my own artwork. So I want to continue working my own ideas and creations, and maybe showing my work here. When I can get a show together. So I'm really exploring that aspect of being an artist, doing art for its own sake, and not for a commission or an illustration. So,
As an artist, a real artist.
yes.
If we want to learn more about you, if we want to learn more about the film, where can we go? Is there a website?
Yeah, there's a website, My Nephew Jamie, or you can go to jameswarhola.com. I have my own website, and I highlight my work on there.
You're gorgeous. Let's do an air kiss.
It must have been 1 o'clock. I ran over there and I told James, I said, I have the chills meeting you. And he didn't believe me. He didn't tell me that right away, but he didn't believe that. But I did. I had the chills because I never thought in my whole life I would get that close to Andy Warhol. So that's how I met him. And then, I thought about it, went home, and I thought, this would be a great documentary film, and that's how we hooked up, and we get along great, right?
Mm-hmm.
We get along really well. I worked with another person who I did a film with who I didn't get along great with, so that was one thing I knew. I had to make sure I got along with him, and I did.
Yeah, he just said, hey, would you mind if I did a documentary about you? And I said, wow, gee, no one's asked me that before. Sure, go ahead. And I thought it was an interesting idea. I didn't know if it would be, I didn't know how far it would go. So I'm amazed that we're at this point where you've come up with a wonderful portrayal of me. I know this is just part of it, and you're in the rough cut stage, and you're doing editing and putting sound and getting all the copyrights for everything. But I mean, it's really an accomplishment. I'm really very, very pleased. I'm very proud of my filmmaker.
Thank you. Thank you.
James, how does it feel to see yourself, in this film? And, how does
I'm a little shy, and it's like, gee, am I worthy of this? I mean, I kind of, it's tough, It's I'm not very boastful to begin with. So to see a film that's kind of focuses on my work. It's like a little startling in a way. So,
Gratifying.
huh?
Gratifying.
Yeah, it is. It is gratifying. I mean, I'm very proud of it.
Should be.
When I see all the work I've done over the years, there's actually a lot of hours into all those pieces. So it's kind of amazing in a way. I'm like kind of shocked, you know.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I found it interesting that, you know, you and your uncle Andy both started. I mean, you're, you know, as an illustrator, you know, and that's what do you, remembering when you were younger, can you talk about his influence?
Well, sure. I mean, that was the main thing. I saw him working, and he was doing this thing called illustration, and he was illustrating shoes and objects and reproducing his own version of the thing on a paper with ink and you know, different colored paints and inks. And it amazed me. I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be doing what he was doing. I didn't want to really be a pop artist. That was like too abstract for me. But I knew that what illustration was. It was kind of an interesting field. So it was definitely a very important influence. And I made sure that I did a lot of drawing and painting back in Pittsburgh. We'd come up and visit, and I'd see what he'd be doing, and I'd continue my interest in it.
Yeah. Your family, I was really fascinated by your family, you know, and Bonnie, you captured the different members very nicely. You had a lot to share about that, and I mean, once you met James, then you started connecting with the family. How did that go?
Well, first of all, I only met two brothers. I mean, I've met the family. I don't think I've met everybody, but I was only able to film the two brothers, Marty and Georgie, who were fabulous. Marty is a panic, and they both have junkyards, and I'm not really familiar with that. You know, I'm a fashion person, so a junkyard is not really something that I visit or anything about. But we had a lot of fun filming in Pittsburgh with the two brothers, and it's a very interesting family. And one of the reasons that I thought this film was important is because the whole Warhola family is fascinating. Number one, James has 6 brothers and sisters, and they come from a rural place, and yet Andy just was like this burst out of star. I mean, he was a big star, and you know, it's just interesting to dig in a little bit and see where he really came from. And most people don't know where he comes from, or he would make stories up and tell people, I'm from nowhere, or I'm from this place, right? Right, James?
Oh yeah, he very rarely said Pittsburgh. I think it was many, many years later he was able to, they were able to find out that he was from Pittsburgh, but he always threw them off as far as where he was from. He didn't, I mean, he's definitely, it's quite a contrast. He come from this blue collar, working class family. They were immigrants, you know, his parents, and my family was kind of that way. And quite a contrast to the life he became, the world he became like in New York. So.
Well, that's interesting, because I was curious, when you were young and visiting your uncle in New York at the factory, you saw all these interesting people from the downtown scene. What were your thoughts? How old were you when you were visiting him at the factory?
Well, we only visited him on occasion. He didn't really want us to come down to the factory because he said we wouldn't find it that interesting. And then my oldest brother, he took me down, and we walked on because it was down on Union Square, and oh yeah, he had one on 47th Street. That was the first factory studio. And sure enough, he was just busy painting. I didn't get to see anything weird or any parties. So my timing must have been, maybe off. Maybe that happened in the evening where they'd have, film shoots and parties and dance, things going on. But yeah, he was hard at work. He'd always have somebody handing him brushes or paint, and he'd look up, he'd see me and my brother and say, "Oh, hi. Oh, okay, nice to see you," and then he'd go back to painting. We didn't miss a beat. Then we'd kind of walk out and leave after staying there for about a half an hour. So it was a real factory scene.
Right. Bonnie, can you share with us your journey of making this documentary? Here you've been, I don't think we know how long you've been doing it, but share with us the brief, some of the highlights, challenges you've encountered in making this film.
It's been a few years.
I absolutely had no idea what I was getting into, to be honest, because I did a short documentary, I had the funding, 1, 2, 3, everything was very fast, and I was in a film festival, I won an award, it was very quick. And this, I just thought, oh, Andy Warhol, I'm gonna get funding right away. Well, guess what? No, that doesn't work like that. And you have to deal with the Warhol Foundation, you have to deal with Artists' Rights Society, you've got to deal with Getty Images, and my archival producer is here tonight, Johanna, and she's been helping me. So I'm at the stage now where I'm finding out how much everything costs, and it costs a lot of money. Just one picture alone of Andy is a fortune, and we have many, obviously. And so this fair use is a term that's used in documentary films. There are things you're allowed to use for free, and then there are things you have to pay for. And I had to hire a fair use lawyer in California, the best one, you met him, the best one. They sent me 50 pages of things I had a license. So I had a nervous breakdown when I saw that. And it was very difficult for me. The one good thing, COVID came, we were ready to do this, like right before COVID, and this type of thing. And the only really wonderful thing that happened during COVID was, because it was quiet, I was able to work with my editor really well. He and I really he was in Vermont, I was in Massachusetts, but we were able to edit, and that was a big deal.
That was a big deal. And what would you say is the most surprising thing that you've learned from making this film, and what would you like audiences to take away from your film?
The most surprising thing, I think, is James's art, because it's so spectacular, and I don't know if it is. And I had to scan each one of those fantasy cards. I don't think you guys will know what I'm talking about, but there's one thing where all the art keeps coming up, and and you see it, a montage. And when I was doing those, I called James, I said, how come you never told me about these? So I was kind of shocked about that, and I think the best part about doing this is there's a layer, and then there's another layer, and then there's another layer, and you can dig deeper and deeper. You could go on forever with this type of thing. So yeah, I think your art, I would say the art was so spectacular, and as much as I love Andy, and I still do, and I love his art, James and at the Norman Rockwell Museum, they've said this to me too. We think you're a better artist than Andy.
Oh boy.
Good one.
We'll be back in a moment, darlings, with more interviews right here at Cognac's Corner Magazine. Keep watching. Pink champagne kisses.
Hello, darlings. You've all heard of Marilyn Monroe. Some of you know Bridget Bardot. Well, now it's time for the Cognac Show. I said cognac, ooh, ooh. I said cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh. I'm a bubbly blonde, fabulously dressed to impress. One of a kind girl, I was brought into this world wrapped up in pearls. I love to mingle, though my husband reminds me I'm not single. I meet and greet both the famous and the elite. I ride in limousines, drinking the finest champagne, wearing furs, dazzling diamond jewelry. A girl can't complain. I live the upscale life, dining in the finest restaurants, eating the best caviar for free. And no matter how much I enjoy cognac, ooh, ooh, I sip cognac, ooh, ooh, ooh.
This has been a Crybaby Productions, darlings.